I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on in. So please welcome the great, I'm going to say doubly great, always swinging Jeff Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Johnny D. I
Ah,
just noticed that you've got a professional drum shop shirt on. Is that to honor Stanley at the Pro Drum Shop?
it
It's his
most certainly
birthday
is.
today. Yeah.
Yes, it most certainly is. I meant to mention that when we were off the air that it's, I knew you knew, and I know
Uh-huh.
you guys are super tight. And I thought if he might tune in, you never know. He's got nothing else to do, probably.
No, no, he's busy picking out certain rivets for jazz drummers that come in and try to keep his store open.
He probably charges you $100 a rivet, though. You know, his,
No, I wish he would because it would be better for me than the harassment as soon as I walk in the door.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it brings to mind a great hang that we all had at Stan's place for their 50th. I remember, I'm sure you were there, Jake Hanna,
Mhm.
rest his soul. Jake was still with us, and Peter and Freddie Gruber and a whole bunch of us were there. And it was, I just, whenever I'm around you, Jeff, and I'm around all those personalities, I lay back and let you and all the guys hold court because it's some of the funniest moments you can be around when you guys start telling stories
Yeah,
and
it was interesting to first come out to LA in '78 and realize that just by listening to these guys that you were egging them on because they could tell you were interested and it's like, well, I got another story about this. And so you just, the more you keep your mouth shut, the more you listen to these guys. And of course, Gruber, forget it. On to the next thing. So yeah, Jake, there were a couple of people who actually took Jake and me out to dinner so he could listen to our stories and then that grew into a drum lunch for various people, including Stan and Pete and Joe LaBarbera, Roy McCurdy,
yeah.
Frank Cap, Ed Shaughnessy, so just kind of grew into this lunch from this guy taking us to lunch to watch the tennis match between the Woody Herman band stories.
Yeah, and I was going to say a lot of ex Woody Herman alum in that group, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's
Jake,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
None of us
Um,
could keep the job.
which brings to mind, I was gonna show you this picture earlier, and then I thought I'd wait a little while, but I can't wait any longer.
Okay.
I found this picture, which I believe is from the PASIC. Let's see, the PASIC 2002 or 2003 Drummers of Woody Herman.
Oh, that was Columbus, Ohio, if that's that.
Exactly, Columbus.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio, and Don Lemond was supposed to be there, but his doctor wouldn't let him fly, and he passed shortly after that convention.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big event. It was so much fun. Jake became the the ringmaster of all of that. The rest of us just sort of sat around and listened to Jake. But that panel discussion was pretty hilarious. Joe LaBarbera, Jimmy
Yeah.
Rupp, Steve Houghton was there, and
Was Ed Soph there too? I
Ed
think was
Stope was
yeah,
there. Yeah,
Soph.
he's the one who graciously announced me at the performance of all of us had the benchmark of being able to play Caledonia, which was 6 seconds a chorus of the blues. So it's
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, as long as you could play that, you knew that you could go on Woody Herman's band. And Jeff Hamilton could do that, but he won't be able to do that for you tonight. Here's Jeff Hamilton. So that was the introduction. My friend Ed Stofe.
Yeah. Well, between you and him, I mean, and I remember that bar at the Hyatt, in Columbus, and all of you guys around a table, and Jake holding court, absolutely. Who
That's right.
I didn't know him well. I met him a handful of times. He was always so sweet, but I was always on my best behavior because it was Jake.
Yeah.
And but man, I just hearing you, I think you were like sitting there smoking a cigar and
No.
I know I was enjoying some red wine with you, but Jake was just we were all just kind of like at the
Well,
edge
and
of our seat.
Gruber, Freddie
Yeah,
Gruber, and then Lenny was there, and so
yeah,
it's like you just know your place to keep your mouth shut and learn.
right, right.
There was one incident, a Jake story quickly that Steve Schaefer, Joe LaBarbera, and I went to hear him at a club here in LA at the time. It's called Spazio's, and we sat right next to the hi-hat. We got the table right next to the hi-hat. Of course,
Wow.
that's all he had. He had a hi-hat, snare drum, bass drum, and a cymbal, you know.
Yeah.
And so he gets off the bandstand. He starts telling Steve and Joe and I about this story about this one-legged dancer, Peg Leg Bates. He had a wooden leg, you know, and of course we're in. Well, let's hear the rest of this story. And this idiot student gets off of the bar area, comes over and plops himself down between Jake and me, and we all look at him like, "Who invited you here? You know, this is like gold right here. We're in the
Yeah.
middle of the story." And the kid's listening, and so Jake's talking about Peg Leg Bates, and oh, the kid says, "Come on. This guy couldn't be that good." And Jake says, "He was that good. He was so good that the horn players would put their horns under their jackets and get off the bandstand. Nobody could follow Peg Leg Bates." And the guy says, "Well, what could he dance? He's got one leg." And Jake said, "He danced the cha." So, that kind of sums up Jake Hanna, you know, I mean, quick as could be, and yeah. And what am I going to follow that with? So you just keep your mouth shut and learn from Jake. You know?
Oh, right on, right on. Yeah, he was something, man. He was something. By the way, Bill Platt. I will just say that Bill Platt is watching, and he says hello to both of
Oh,
us.
hi,
So,
Bill. Great of him to join us. Yeah.
fantastic. But yeah, that memory. I was telling Kelly this morning. I said I have to find. There's a picture I have somewhere of that PASIC, and I found it. I'm glad I did because it was such a great memory. And you guys, that was one of the greatest evening concerts ever, PASIC. That I mean, do you remember that? It was
I
just
very very well, Johnny.
yeah,
I do. We all felt that way.
yeah,
It was just this big love fest of drum. The hair stand up on the back of my neck as I'm talking about this because the band came ready to play too,
wow,
and they actually chose the songs that they wanted me to play. You know, it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought we got to choose the song. They said, no, you're playing this and you're playing this, and it's like, well, okay. You know, I like both of them, so okay. And to have Jake lead it off with the Good Earth, which was all one of the great Woody Herman
man,
charts of all time, and it set the course for the night. It's like, okay, we all have to bring it here, you know, and
yeah,
nobody's trying to outdo anybody because it was all kind of different kind of music, but we got to be who we are and who we were when we remember this band, which is what Woody expected. What are you going to bring
yeah.
to the band?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my takeaway from it, watching it, was that right there was none of that. Anybody trying to. There was not even a smidge of that. It was really just everybody playing their best to honor the music, you know,
Right,
and
right.
to honor, you know, the fact that you guys were so lucky and blessed to be there at that time in your lives, to be in that band and
Yeah.
hold that chair, you know, even if it wasn't for very long. It was. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
uh, to have that opportunity. Actually, mine was only a 6 month stint. I told him I would stay on for a year. He was looking for somebody to stay on for a year, and Ray Brown hired me off of the band to move to LA. And so I said, I owe you 6 months worth. So anytime you need help, call me. And he did. I went back on the band about 15 times in the next. I don't know, 7, 8 years, and would do
Wow.
2 weeks at a time or something. So I think I got my year in eventually, but he held me
You
to that.
absolutely, yeah. I didn't realize that, Jeff. I assumed you were there for, you know, for a good amount of time. So that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people do. We did 3 recordings in one month. The month I got off the band, January of '78, we did 3 recordings, and one was a Grammy nomination. So everybody thought, oh, he must have been, because Woody's band recorded once every 3 years or something by
Yeah.
that point. So I think that's why people think I was on the band a little longer the first time, you know.
Yeah. Now, were you playing with Woody or Ray Brown? You told me a story a long time ago, that you played right here down the street from where I live in Cohasset, Mass. I think I have this right. And Buddy and you were on the same bill.
Right.
Is that right? Okay. And was it? Do you remember? Was it the Music Circus in Cohasset,
Yes.
Mass? Okay.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
live literally 3/10 of a mile up the street from it. Um, and I think of you, honestly, and you told me a story about, and this is with all respect to Buddy, but you kind of ate his lunch that day, I think, if the story goes, and he didn't like it. He didn't
Uh,
appreciate that.
we're gonna have the hate mail. Um,
No, 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 no. This
But
is
what Well, Buddy was in a lousy mood, and I had only been on the band for 2 weeks, but I went on the band with everything memorized. I mean, you go on that band ready like you own the chair, you know.
Yeah.
And
And who were you playing with at that point, Jeff? Sorry.
Woody's band, yeah,
It
it
was
was Woody,
Woody's band. Okay.
Joe
Yeah.
Lovato on tenor, and Mark Johnson on bass. And, we had a hell of a band. Alan Vizzuti played lead trumpet, and he was getting the band ready to go to Europe. So we were hitting on all cylinders. And at the end of 2 weeks, we really were clicking. And so we went on first, and Woody was kind of grumbling, like, "No, I want to go on last," and like I remember him saying, "Put them on first," and the competitor in Woody. And so that night, I was playing a cymbal that was half eaten because I kept grinding it away because I kept cracking it. It's the only time I used a crash cymbal. And it was an old A that I traded a high school buddy, and it just kept cracking. So it was kind of like three-quarters of a cymbal
Yeah.
and had a flat side to it, and it was about head level. And after their gig, Lenny DiMuzio, unbeknownst to me, this guy, I'm 23, and a guy comes up to me and he says, "Hey kid, you're too good to play a cymbal that looks and sounds like that." And I said, "Oh, thank you. Here's my card. Come out tomorrow. We'll set you up." And that's the night I got my Aveda Zildjian
Wow.
endorsement at that
Wow.
gig. Yeah. And the band was swinging. We had a great night. We all felt good. Got off the bandstand. Buddy came up mad. He was mad at the band, and he fired one of the trumpet players early in the set. And it was, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 tunes in the set. And I said, "Man, I have so much respect for Buddy. He's one of my biggest heroes. I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a good night. He's not having a good night." So I went on the bus, and read a book for the end of the gig. And then we took off and got a message later from Bill Byrne that Buddy said, "Tell that drummer he sounded good," and that was about it. But Lenny took me to meet him. And we went up into the dressing room, and I thought, well, Lenny's got carte blanche, Veda Zildjian and Buddy, and he just throws open the dressing room door, and Buddy is putting on his toupee in the mirror. This is not good timing.
No.
"Get
No.
the hell out of my! Who told you could kind of bang?" Slam the door, and I said, "Thanks, Lenny." I never did get to meet Buddy on under the right circumstances. There was always something like that that happened. Shelly Mann tried to introduce me to him. He says, "Hey, you know Jeff Hamilton?" He said, "No." This is after I've been on the Woody's band. He says, "Well, you better watch it because one of these days he's going to hand both of us our butts." And Buddy says, "Oh yeah." It's like, oh my God, I can't.
Oh man.
I couldn't win with Buddy. I couldn't. So anyway, yeah, that was a great night. We had a really good night with the band, and the band just kept getting better through that whole period, through the European tour and all. But that
Wow.
was quite a memorable night. That was my Zildjian endorsement night that
How about
Lenny
that?
DeMuzio so graciously offered. So yeah,
That's what a great story. Yeah. And Lenny would have been right down the street too. It's right in our backyard. So
yeah,
wow. And from that gig, as you said, you got tapped to do the Ray Brown gig, and
yeah.
then that's what made you move to LA, was that having
Yeah.
that gig. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd been to New York just enough to know I didn't want to live there. I was on Lionel Hampton's band in '75, and I stayed on 46th Street between Broadway and 7th as a Century Paramount Hotel, 11.50 a day, $11.50 a day. And it's like, I don't think I want to live here. So when I got off Hamp's band, it was like, I want to see what LA's like. I've never been there. Let me see what that's like. And so I'd made a couple of trips with Monty Alexander Trio and John Clayton on bass, and I really loved LA. And as you know, I was a tennis player for 30 some years.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you can play tennis all the time out here, and you can get a court. You can, and I'd met Ray Brown, and Ray implied that he wanted to keep his eye on me, and that he was going to call me one of these days for something. And when that call came, it was on Woody's band in '77.
Yeah.
So I relocated to LA to replace. No, I didn't replace the drummer in the group. The LA Four left the group. His name is Shelly Mann. And
Yes.
so they needed a drummer to come in, and Ray and Bud Shank hired me in that group with Lorenzo Almeida on guitar, and that was my move to LA in '78, January '78.
Wow. And there you stayed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And really kind of establish yourself there as a like I mean, session work and teaching, and as well as touring, and
yeah. Not so much the teaching and not too much session work, just enough. And the session work was really nice because I didn't have to be a session studio sausage that went in and sounded like somebody else. The session
Yeah.
work I got, I'd had kind of a reputation for what I did, and they were calling me for what I do. So that was kind of nice at 24, 25 years old to not be told to sound like somebody else on a cereal commercial. You know, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was getting studio calls to play the way I play.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And you grew up in Indiana,
Right.
and started playing, lessons, formal lessons at a young age. And I asked Peter this question the other day, and it was a similar sort of question. But would you say that you knew pretty much at a very young age that this was what you were going to do? I mean, was there any ever? Did you ever think of anything else you might want to do, or was it always like, this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to be a drummer.
I didn't think of anything else seriously.
Yeah.
But I always, I remember asking my snare drum teacher when I was about 9, can I make any money doing this? And he goes, yeah, if you're the best. And it's like, okay, so you got to win the contest. I started 8 years old,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
snare drumming, and at that time, that teacher would not let you get a drum set until you won your first contest on snare drum, and you couldn't enter the contest till you were 12. So I had 5 years of rudimental snare drumming, which was a blessing in disguise because it was like wind Jeffy up and let him go, let him rip. I was in Nard. Uh,
Yeah.
you're old enough to know that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When I was 12, I was in Nard, and that was a big accomplishment for me to do that. And then I won my first contest shortly after that. Then I got a drum set that I could start playing, drums, learning drums. And I thought, man, these hands are happening, but whose feet do these belong to? So I think like anybody who starts off on snare drum and then it's like, oh, I got to do this too, So
Oh, yeah. But I'm sure it didn't take long. I'm sure it.
it's
Yeah. And
still it's still taking a long time, John.
well, when I asked that question, it's probably, might seem obvious to people, but I asked that because I feel like, you have such focus, and all the time that I've known you, which we know now is over 30 years, I mean, I think it's important for students, for, young drummers, older drummers to realize that the amount of work and focus it takes to get to the level or even get near the level that you're at, and um, you can't half-ass it, I guess is what I'm saying. I
No,
know from
right. You're right. And you haven't done that in your career. Everything has been 100% and you don't mess around. You do the heck out of your job, whatever it is. And people are still talking about the job, that you did at Zildjian
well,
and
thank you.
referring to you as like it wouldn't have been the same if he wasn't there. So, we have that in common, I think, but the 100% of yeah, don't go any into anything halfway. Mean what you do. And I've been laughing about this lately because I get made fun of because I can't remember the oven temperature at which to bake a chicken for how many minutes. But I can go on Woody Herman's band and play every chart in the book from 1977, and it's selective memory, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that meant 100% to me to learn that. It was a big deal, and a chicken is a chicken. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, I'll get to that later, maybe. So I think it's selective for all of us what you choose to spend 100% on. And the other thing is, you can really be into something 100%, but you don't have any talent. So you're wasting your time. So there has to be a talent factor there and then a passion for it for you to continue on that path of what really does it for you. Like I'm not going to be happy doing this job. I want to be playing drums with these people in this genre and really focus on what that is. And that for me, it was my 4 goals as a young man were play with Oscar Peterson, Ray Brown, Woody Herman, and Count Basie. And you just set those goals and work toward them, but it takes a whole lot to get there. So
Yeah.
but you got to have some talent, I think, to get we can't sell the talent short I tell students that all the time is, yeah, you can be passionate about something, but do you think you can do this?
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
talented enough to sit in that chair?
Well said. Yep, you're right. I mean, you can have all the, like you say, all the dedication and ambition and everything else, but you're right. You've got to have the talent. I mean, you're not gonna You're not going to get to play with those people without the talent
Well, the
and
reverse is
everything
true
else.
too. I grew up with so many people, beautiful hands. They just looked like they were born with a pair of sticks in their hands or a pair of brushes, and it was like, man, I wish my hands looked and sounded like that, you know. And you're standing next to them in a snare line in a marching band, and they quit after high school or they quit after college or
Wow.
they
Yeah.
and you always wonder what happened to these people because I wish I had those hands, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
But they had all the talent in the world, but they didn't want to continue, you know. So
Yep.
the reverse is true. You can be big on talent and not have the passion or the ambition to go forward.
That's another great point. Yep. I a very good friend of mine who studied with Alan Dawson, with the great Fred Buda here in Boston, who was sort of like when I started playing drums, he was the same age, but he had been playing a few years already and was a sort of mentor. And he's a very successful CPA, has his own firm, does really well, but kind of just stopped at a point. And that's a really good point you made that he,
But what did he learn from Alan Dawson that is instilled in his new career about the discipline of learning and the focus and the concentration and you know it whatever you that's what I tell
yeah,
the students that I've had in the past is whatever you learn from this music it's gonna relate to whatever you choose to do because what it took for you to get this good and to care this much about what you're doing, just take that to the next whatever it's going to be for you and apply that. And it's, I mean, it's been proven everybody that's in band in school does better in all these subjects. And there's just something about music that helps people deal with other people well, you know.
hmm
So, I mean, all that we're getting off into another area,
no,
but
this is great. That's what we do here, Jeff.
no, no, I meant to
We
say
just
we're
go,
not
yeah.
talking about me, John. You know, this is an interview. I thought this was the. Now, where were
Uh,
we?
I know we were talking about you. And speaking of you, I love you, and I'm so glad to see you. This is great. It's long overdue. Um, when did you? This is a really this people are going to go. Why does he ask such dumb questions? Poor Jeff. No, but was there a time where you really started to focus? You're a cymbal player. I think of you. You're a fabulous brush player. Um, but I remember the late great Armin Zildjian, who just adored you and loved your playing so much, and Lenny, of course, Lenny DeMusio. And you were like you're any cymbal company's dream in terms of your cymbal playing. So was there a time where you started to really focus on your ride beat and
Yes.
how you and yeah, okay. Was that John Van Olen? Was that before that? Was
Um, well, Gene Krupa was my first influence at 5 years old. I thought I got to do that, slick back my hair and dress like him. And then, you know, everybody, I went along with the crowd that said Buddy's faster and more dynamic. And so I kind of went from Gene to Buddy, still kind of keeping Gene here, but boy, Buddy was doing it. And, you know, I'm like 13, 14, 15 and seeing Buddy's band live and then being rebuffed trying to get an autograph later. And well, Gene's a nice guy. Maybe I should go back to Gene, you know. And so all that rudimental buildup, all from the snare drumming, because my drum teacher said, here's how the rudiments are applied to the drum set. If you get now, you got all these 26 rudiments. At the time, that's all we knew.
yeah.
26 rudiments, still all I know. Due to the 26 rudiments, and here's how they apply to the drum set. And so it was easy. Six-stroke rolls just flowed around the tom-toms at the snare, and it's like, man, I can do this, you know. So Buddy and Gene were great influences on that. And then Roy Burns gave a clinic, knocked me out. I saw Ed Shaughnessy, same kind of thing. It's like, wow, they're all applying this. Louis Belson, happy birthday yesterday, you know,
Yes. Yep.
98 he would have been, I think, or something. And so I start seeing this, and a dear friend, I can't just pass over Louis Belson like that. Um, Seeing these people approach the drum set like this, it was a big deal to me to focus on the drums. The cymbals were an accessory. And little did I pay attention to the early Buddy Rich playing with Ray Brown and Jazz Philharmonic Records and Art Tatum, that the brush playing and his cymbal beat were phenomenal. And when I got to play with Ray Brown, we talked about drummers one day, and I asked him who his favorite was. And this surprises everyone, but he said Buddy Rich.
Yeah.
He said
Wow.
he will be in the trenches with you playing quarter notes. It doesn't make any difference if there are 20 tenor players standing in front of you or not. He's in the trenches with you, and he'll go to battle with you to the very end. And we had fun doing it, and we did it well together. So there was another aspect that I missed of Buddy,
Yeah.
until I
Yep.
talked to Ray about it and then did more homework on really what that was. And his cymbal beat was incredible in those days. With his band, I think it changed. With the big, he had to be Buddy Rich, he had to be the leader. So all of that changed.
Sure. Yep.
But not making a band at Indiana University my freshman year, I thought, there are three bands. Surely I'll get in one. And I didn't make a band.
Wow.
Uh, Another freshman that year, somebody named Erskine, got the top band. And
Don't know.
so I thought, well, I guess I'll have to do what he did. I don't know who this guy is coming in from East Coast, but I guess and two other very good drummers. In fact, Bill Molinoff, who invented five mallet playing on
Mm.
marimba in Germany, we got the third band. And so he split. He didn't want to play drum set. He wanted to go study with Gary Burton at Berkeley in Boston. So I got in the third band my second semester. So that kind of got my attention. Like, why don't they want me?
Mm.
And I was playing too much. I was playing a lot of soul drums. And so John Von Olen, who was in Indianapolis and a veteran of the Kenton Band and Woody Herman Band, and I'd go hear him. I started hearing him play. I heard him with the Kenton Band sit in once, and it was like, yeah, he's good, but he doesn't have any technique, you know. And so seeing him live in a small group is like, I want that ride cymbal. That he's focused on that ride cymbal. And I took a lesson with him, and the first lesson I was 19. That was after my sophomore year at Indiana. And he said, play for me. So I'm blowing out the windows, ending it with, what make you big it so hard? Wham. And I turned around and looked at him, and he's standing in the doorway, kind of like this, and shell shocked. And he says, well, I don't know what you were doing, but it was impressive. And I'm thinking, oh, I guess I was over his head. I said, well, thank you. And he says, well, what do you want from me? And I said, your approach to the ride cymbal, your sound. And it made me think about all the things I liked about him. His brush
Hmm.
playing I loved, setting up a big band, his idea for melodic fills and soloing. And he said, well, then get up. So I got up off the drums, and he was all arms and legs, and he just sat down, and he threw the stick at the cymbal and went, dag-a-day, dag-a-day, dag-a-day. And my knees buckled, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I said, that's it. That's it. Show me that.
Yeah.
And from that point on, you are correct. I am a cymbal player. From that point on, I became a cymbal player during that lesson with John Von Olen.
Wow. And that really kind of became, amongst other things, like a real main focus of your playing. That
Yes.
yeah. I
That was my go-to and still is. If you've got that going every night, because everybody's going to hit a wall with a fill sometimes or
Yeah.
comping, independence issues and coordination. But if you've got the ride cymbal going and you bring everything else to the ride cymbal, is my theory, that's your go-to. You're not going to have a bad night. But we start focusing on the almighty fill and the almighty solo, and the ride cymbals over here going, da, 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 it's not making it. But if
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
thinking, I think of a third arm out here playing the ride cymbal while I'm doing all this other stuff, and your awareness is big. You get the whole audience in your awareness. Sometimes you have to leave some of them out. You get the whole awareness of the band around you, and you're not just playing right here with the blinders on, getting through your double paradiddles. I mean, you're playing music based on the sound and the lovely warm sound you're getting from the ride cymbal, and then the
Yeah.
same approach to the drums. You let the stick drop through the drums. You don't force anything. Von Ola said if you have to tighten up to play anything, don't play it. It takes you out of your mindset.
That's great. That's huge. Yeah. And you impart that to your students. That's kind of
Whenever I teach, yeah,
yeah.
I don't do much teaching, but yeah, that's or anybody who wants to talk about it, I tell.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. And it makes sense that it goes back that far, that 19, 20 years old, that's kind of the root of where it all started.
Right, you got my
Yeah.
attention. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And you
And I
said
heard the difference. I mean, I heard the difference immediately. The players I was playing with at the time would tell you, wow, what happened to you overnight? First of all, you're swinging, it's looser. Your sound is big and warm. It's easy to crawl into your beat. It's big, warm, fuzzy sound. You're not doing this in our ribs, with your ride cymbal. And, so
Yeah.
all those comments came like within a week or two of that lesson.
And
So that one,
was there an adjustment that you had to make, Jeff, in terms of how you hold the stick or how your stroke, or was it really, or did some of it come from relaxing more and just, you know,
yes,
listening and breathing?
relaxing, yes, that was the main part of it.
Yeah.
A lot of finger control. I was using too much finger control, and a lot of it was this and arm motion. I'm not a big arm motion player. Mel Lewis, the less you move, the more energy you're going to preserve. And why aren't you making it look easy? You're making it harder than it is. So make it look easy. It should be effortless.
Yeah.
So minimum movement is what I've always believed in from Von Olin and then Mel, who was Von Olin's mentor, and then Tiny Khan before Mel. So all that was kind of passed down to just, I mean, Mel Lewis looked like he was a bank teller. If you just saw him from the chest up, you didn't know he had a set of drums under him.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that economy of motion really sank into me, and not much arm motion. I still don't use much arm. I'm not a in order to hit a cymbal, I think you raise it up and you let the stick drop on the cymbal. I don't think you need a big wind up to hit something. I think you got a piece of metal, you need a piece of wood, you need to strike something. So do we need the pitcher's wind up to get to it, or can we just go ding? That's where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
your focus is more compact than on where you need to do it and what you need to do.
And I would assume that you would agree that one's time is going to be better playing that way as well, right? You're gonna be able to play better time, a better
Well,
beat.
at first, no, because you're so relaxed, so it gets a little lazy. So that's where the intensity has to come in from here, because you're used to this, the dun, 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 dun. Their intensity's from here to here, and now it's coming from here, and this is doing this.
Yeah.
So you got to be thinking ding, diggity, 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 ding, and there's your motion. One bounce. I mean, one motion and three bounces, and you let this get the fingers off the stick, except for this, and let it do the work. We all do that at a fast tempo anyway.
Mm.
So I just
Hmm.
slow it down and do it, and the stick gets the sound for you. So a tighter fulcrum here, build up this muscle, and I mean, that's got to be tight, that fulcrum, and let the stick do the work without controlling it so much.
That's
So
yeah.
then your time gets better, but you got to sing your time. You got to sing where your beat is. Have four drummers line them up and have them sing their cymbal beat. It's gonna be ta 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 da. Another one dink dink a dink dink a dink. Another spang spangalang spangalang. Another ta chu ka. They're all different, so they have to be in touch with how they're singing it in order to put the stick on the cymbal and get that out of the stick onto the cymbal.
Yeah.
And
That's
drummers don't sing. Drummers don't say all the
yeah.
mouths are closed and the teeth are clenched, and you grit your teeth through the wall for that fill. Bang, Now let's get back to playing time.
Yeah. 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 That's great. This is a great lesson. I don't want you to give too much away for free here. Well,
Yeah, they start at $200, Johnny. So I'll get you my address. All right. I'm sorry, left-handers are 250.
I knew it. I knew it. Darn. Oh man. By the way, Bob Terry is watching. Our friend Bob
Oh
Terry.
man, Bob Terry, very
Love Bob Terry.
responsible for me being with Mapex, and a great friend. He was at Indiana that year too. He was a freshman with me at IU.
Wow. No, I
Yeah,
didn't know that. Wow.
small world. Yeah,
You guys go back that far. That's
that's right.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about Mapex too, because I was going to just segue backwards a little bit, talking about Zildjian for 1 second. Um, I used to work there, for those of you who don't know, and that's where Jeff and I met. No, I'm kidding. I think probably people do know that, but um, if you don't mind me saying, Jeff, I think it'd be interesting for people to know that you were very integral in the development of the Zildjian K Constantinople cymbals in the 90s.
Mhm.
And I enjoyed working with you during that time, and I think you deserve, whether you want it or not, some credit for that, and and giving some guidance and some great input in the development and all that. So
Well, thank you for the
kudos.
credit. I told you the price of lessons. My bank account number happens to be um, the at the time, Lenny was asking me exactly what I was looking for in a cymbal, and I was by being such a Mel Lewis fan and cymbals that he gave me, and Lawrence Marable had an old cymbal that was an old. All these are old original Ks from Istanbul, K Zildjian, and I was playing a lot of those, and
Hmm.
uh, so I just said, well, the shape of the cymbal from talking with Mel Shelley, Papa Joe, Philly Joe Jones,
Yeah.
and Ed Thigpen. I mean, all the people that I loved and studied with or studied them to the point where they said get out of here. Uh, I took all of that cymbal information and put it together in what I thought it should be that might be the symbol that I would want to play, and not necessarily an old K because you had to go through 100 of those to find one good one, as we
Yeah.
all know.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I came up with the kind of shape, the bell, what I thought the bell should be, and talked to you at Zildjian about that. And yeah, we were on the ground floor of those cymbals becoming what Constantinople is the biggest selling symbol for Zildjian, right?
It's one of the best. I think it's probably not the biggest just because of the price tag, but certainly in the genre of jazz
Yeah.
K type cymbals. Yeah, they were successful. They are
Yeah.
successful. I think.
So I understand there were others involved in their input, but I don't know if there was anyone before Lenny asked me to do it. I don't know the timeline on what that was about. So
I don't think there was. Like we said before, I think I remember speaking with you at a NAMM show and having just joined the company and meeting you for the first time, and you were the go-to guy.
well, in that case, I have two bank accounts.
There's the one in the Caymans, and then there's the one in L.A. No,
Uh,
but it was. I just wanted to share that because I just feel that for what it's worth, it's important that people you're associated with having great sounding cymbals, whether it's your work with Bosphorus and putting those guys on the map, and now what you've developed with Crescent and the cymbals that you have. I mean, it's who you are, it's your sound, and I just thought people as drummers, people should know that, whether
oh,
uh, yeah, it's
thank you.
yeah,
I have to say
absolutely.
that I think where we are now with Mark Love at Sabian, that he's really perfected all of the issues about the cymbal. And as far as the structure and how long it lasts, how long will it hold up, and Mark has done a fantastic job at Sabian for making my cymbal, the hammer tone cymbal.
Yeah, yeah, they're beautiful cymbals,
Yeah, I got it
absolutely.
right where I want it now.
Yeah, yeah, good, beautiful. And I think I see some other friends here. I'll just say a quick hello to David Hakim at Modern Drummer, of
Nice,
course,
thank you.
and I thought I saw Michael Vosbean, but maybe I didn't. No, I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, I'm
Another
glad he
old friend.
checked in. He knows all that history. That my business partner at
Yeah,
Bosphorus and Crescent. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, you've created a tremendous legacy, both in your playing, your recordings, but also in what you've done for the industry. With drums and cymbals, and I know I'm sort of jumping backwards here a little bit, but I remember your involvement with Remo and with our friend Steve Edelson, the late great Steve Edelson, and we were talking offline about and I'd love for you to just take a second and talk about the drums. You're with Mapex now, and we're going to definitely get to that because that's where you are and that's where you're going to stay. But I told you I remembered seeing you play at the Montreal Drum Fest, and this would it have been the late '90s, early 2000s, maybe?
96 maybe 90
Wow.
something like that. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. And
97.
I'm going to let you tell the story because it's great the way you told it before. But I just remember your performance was show-stopping as always, but the sound of your drums was phenomenal with just two overhead mics. And I'll let you kind of set it all up now if you wouldn't mind.
All right. This was the second edition of the Remo drum, so it wasn't the final Gold Crown series, the Master Touch or something. But they really were sounding great, and they had a maple veneer on it. You know, Vinwood is what they called the veneer. And
Right.
I had followed Virgil Donati and Bobby Rock trading, like the Great Montreal Massacre. With, I mean, it was like they were just blowing each other off of their platforms. With they each had about 10 drums and 10 cymbals, and they were
Yeah.
just it was something to behold, man. I mean, the floor of the stage was shaking, and I'm next uh, uh, with a four-piece drum set and thrh and so, but that never bothered me. I'll follow this. Everybody else goes, "Oh no, this is going to be a disaster. What's he going to do?" And so they finished, and it's phenomenal. And they get off, and I have them take the risers off too. I want to sit on the stage. Just
Right.
give
Yeah.
me a carpet, and I'll sit on the stage. And so there's like 20 microphones. Where do we put these? And I said, I just would like two overheads on this. It was a concert hall.
Yeah. Beautiful
No, we're
sound.
not gonna. After that, we're not gonna hear it. I said, yeah, I know. But believe me, I can get my sound. I want to bring the audience to me, so I just would like two overheads. And they begrudgingly did this, and then the guy said, well, we have a backdrop. We have three different backdrops, and one was like a walnut dark wood. And they put it down, and I asked Steve to go in the middle of the hall. And I said, so how's it sound? He says, good. I said, what's your other backdrop? And they put down like a maple backdrop and a little lighter than the walnut color. And I said, how does that sound? He says, it sounds pretty much the same. And I said, okay. All right, we have one more. And it was this blonde wood that matched my drums. I said, how does this sound? He goes, it sounds pretty much the same. I said, let's leave this one because it looks good with the drums. It matches my drums. And I went out and I played a ballad for 2.5 minutes with the brushes. And you could hear a pin drop there. It's like, that was I learned from my elders. Don't go out and try to do what you are following. Be yourself and do what you do, and bring the audience to you. So that's how that segment got started. But and with if you know how to get your balance and the drums sound good. I love the Remo drums. I played them for what 90 from 94 maybe or something. I played the
Yeah.
Remo
Yeah.
drums, and
Early. Yeah, early
I
on.
had
Yeah.
my sound, and everybody who played my drums admitted, even though they'd make fun of them later, they admitted to me, man, these drums sound great.
Yeah.
But it's the image that everybody hears with their eyes and not with their ears. So I love those drums, and I would have kept playing them, except they stopped making them, and I was the last person to find out. And Bob Terry was the person to tell me that they weren't making drums anymore. It's like, oh, okay, but I have a drum set in my trunk that I'll give you. So he and Russ Miller had been in cahoots over what drums I would like to play, and it went right down to the finish, the same color and everything. So, and they knocked me out, and they are incredible drums. They're the easiest drums I've ever played in my life. And I get hung up one night on the bass drum. It's like, man, I've never heard a bass drum sound this great before. And another night it'll be the floor tom, and it's like I'll just lay on it for a while. So
Boy.
they're really it's a phenomenal product, and hats off to Russ Miller for engineering this whole mess, because he was an engineering student. He wasn't a music student. He was so
Yeah.
take that in. You interviewed Russ, so you know that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Russ is a boy. He's a force when it comes to
Yeah.
all that. And Jeff, when I heard you were playing Mapex, that to me, they were just making moves, getting better and better and better. All these years, and then when Russ got involved, as we said, he really took it up another notch. And
Right.
and then when you honestly, when I heard you were playing their drums, I thought, wow, that speaks volumes in terms of, you could play any drum you want. Any drum company would want to have you, and the fact that you're playing Mapex really speaks for how great the drums are, how great they sound. That's what you're all
Well,
about.
thank you. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's always been kind of what I'm about. I mean, every endorsement I've gotten has come to me. I don't go seeking endorsements, which I would like to see some other artist take that approach instead of what can the company do for me. I'm a big shot. Um, and so when you have that kind of a relationship with the company where they want you to play their instrument, then you can work together on what it is you're looking for, if it's not exactly what you're looking for. And in this case, it was exactly.
Right.
So there weren't any things that needed to be changed. It was the drums were perfect, and I still feel that way. And I still I use two overheads on the drums, and I still am in battle with sound engineers that, oh, I'll just leave the bass drum mic here in case I need it. And I said, have you heard me play? No. Have you heard the drums? No. Okay, let me just listen to this first, and then if you need to add anything, well, I'll just have them here in case. It's like, no, no, you're ruining my reputation.
Yeah, no.
I just want two overheads. I'll get the sound.
Engineers are funny. They really are front of house guys. And this is no disrespect toward them, but
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'll tell you the reason it is because a lot of them that are under 40 years old have never stood in front of an acoustic band to hear what it's supposed to sound like.
right.
And so I I can't blame them for not knowing, but I do blame them for not being open to listen to people that have been doing this for 45 years. And I don't care what the new model of microphone you have, you're going to get my sound, and that microphone is not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah,
When we're playing pianissimo, you're not going to need to turn it up, and all the things. So it's just the lack of knowledge of how to get this music.
right,
And then
right.
they run off in a huff and pout the rest of the time and don't talk to you afterwards. And oh, he's a grumpy old guy. And it's like, yeah, but you heard how it sounded, right?
I know, and I think I in my situation that I've playing in rock bands too, Jeff. It seems to be that they kind of want to do it fast and easy. They almost like a cookie cutter. We're going to put a hole in the bass drum head. We're going to muffle the shit out of the bass drum. We're just going to go for a, you know, it's like, well, no, man, I have a full head in the front. I got a little muffling inside. I want to hear the bass drum. I want to feel the bass drum. I want it to boom a little bit, you know? Don't be afraid of a little resonance in the bass drum.
Many of them don't know, and they have their sound. And there are a lot of older engineers too that had their sound. And I actually had a confrontation with somebody that was about my age. And he said, well, we'll do it your way, but that's not my sound that I normally get. And I said, people aren't buying this recording for your sound.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're buying
Beautiful.
it
Yeah.
for the engineering. They're buying it for what you capture that I'm going to do, and he walked away. I mean, there's no argument for that.
Exactly. Exactly.
All you can do is compress it and ruin it, or with the equalize or whatever it is. But just can you get the natural sound of the drums, which is
Yeah.
why I was called for this session.
Not long after I saw you at the Montreal Drum Fest, and I'm sure one or two times after that at a PASIC, I saw, the same setup where you had the overhead mics. We did these clinics with Steve Gadd, these Mission from Gadd tours, around the country and around Europe. And Steve applied the same principle that you applied, which was, the first couple of clinics, they were in big auditoriums with a lot of people, and they had a big sound system. And he had said ahead of time, I really I don't want to mic the drums like it's a big rock concert. I really want to hear the drums as one instrument, just exactly what you said. And finally, a few clinics in, he kind of put his foot down, and to me, who was the tour manager, who then had to go and put my foot down to the sound engineer. But I felt bad, like I was offending them. And I said, no, I said, he really he just wants some overheads. He wants to be able to hear the drums, but not overpower people. And we finally got it dialed in exactly like you said. I think he did have a bass drum mic, but very low, and I think that was because he liked to have a little bit of bass drum in his monitor. That
Okay.
and to do that he had to have a little bit in the but but the sound that he got was, to your point, it was like this beautiful organic. When a guy like you is playing the drums, or a guy like Steve or Peter, you can make all those things sound like one instrument. It's, you don't have to worry about bringing the hi-hat up louder to match how hard you're hitting this. Yeah, all those things we know. And I think maybe a lot of sound engineers just don't understand that, you've got the tools to make this, acoustic
Well,
instrument sound great.
and in their defense, a lot of drummers don't have the tools to do that,
Right.
and they
Yeah.
rely on a microphone to give them a bigger backbeat on the snare drum. So I need this at so many dBs, and these tom mics pick this up better than this, and so you become reliant on those. But acoustic music is a different ball game, and that's where I think a lot of the engineers haven't experienced a lot of acoustic bands and what players can do. All of our heroes, as you're telling me this story about Steve Gadd, all of our heroes were in a room in a band with one microphone in the center of the room. And you had to balance yourself with everybody else in the band. They knew how to play dynamically. They knew how to blend with other musicians. The minute you start close miking every instrument, even in a big band, you know, I don't like every instrument mic'd in a big band because
Hmm.
then it's out of the hands of the band. It's in the guy at the board, and he doesn't know if this trumpet player's sound is louder than this, or you know what the deal is. So you take it out of the hands, the band's hands at that point. But you know, growing up having to blend and play with an upright bass without an amplifier is a big deal. You need to learn
Yeah.
how to do that before you even talk about the sound of the band and how you're going to fix the sound of the band. Okay,
That's
I'm off my soapbox.
no, no. That this is gold. This is great. I think we're giving people way too much free stuff here today. I don't know. This is
I'm glad to hear you say that, John.
so. I'm gonna put Jeff's bank accounts up when we're done with this show. The routing numbers. I do have a question, Jeff. In this, I don't know
It'll
if
be
you
the
can
one
answer.
in red.
Anthony Cusina is asking, what two microphones do you choose, Jeff? Is there a specific mic or
Doesn't matter to me.
a good
Doesn't matter.
quality
I don't want
overhead
to I
mic?
don't want
Yeah.
to entirely do their job for them. If you got microphones you like, then you know you can use them. I came back from Germany. I got probably at the time the greatest drum sound I've gotten on a trio recording I did. Wolfgang Hirschman, the great retired German producer and engineer,
Yes.
had a microphone here and he had a microphone here, and he had one 6 feet, 4 feet in front of the bass drum, and that's all he used. And he got my complete sound. And I listened to him on the play. I asked him on the playback, I've never seen mic placement like that. How did you do this? And I'd worked with him numerous times on
Yeah.
other projects, big band projects. And he said, where do you hear the music? Where do you hear your drums? And I said, you know, right here and here. And he said, right. And I just have a little to give a little more presence and some more room sound to your bass drum. And I came back and told 3 engineers that I work with in LA, and I love all of them. Steve Genowick at Capitol has been Al Schmidt's right-hand man for years. Bill Smith, another right-hand man with Al Schmidt. And I told them about this miking system, and I told
Yeah.
them what the mics were. And Steve says, oh, you want to do it? Let's set it up. It didn't sound good. And he says, I don't know what they did, but I don't like what I'm getting. And I said, I don't like it either. You know, so
Wow.
there's a point where the engineer's knowledge of what to do, and so
Yeah.
it's not just about
Yeah.
model of microphone. It's the person running the knobs that knows what to do with those mics. And so I don't have a favorite mic. I've heard several overhead mics that I love on recordings and live.
Yeah.
I do have to say the ones that surprise me is the one that has been sold now, but Morton, who my friend who was the DPA microphones, and he invented those things, and I wouldn't let him clip them on. I don't want clip-on mics on the drums. It chokes
Mm.
the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, all right, but let me just put them on a stand and I want you to hear. And those were incredible. They were the smallest microphone, but they sounded incredible.
Wow.
So, you know, I don't want to always say, you got to have this mic, you got it, because you
Yeah.
could have, you know, if
In
I
the
was back
room.
there running and it would sound terrible, you know.
Yeah. And the room obviously makes a difference too, and all those other factors that you're talking about. And
Right.
yeah, and very interesting. In that particular that recording in Germany, were all you guys in the same room, or were you in it? Were
Yeah.
you were so.
And there were no baffles. And we did our trio setup. So bass is next to the hi-hat,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
piano is arm length from the bass player, you know, with his side kind of turned so he could turn to the side and see us, and our usual piano trio setup.
Yeah. And it's, there's so much to be said for, as you pointed out, the fact that you can, I mean, play dynamically is beside the point, but you're accustomed to playing at a volume where you can hear everybody acoustically. You don't have to worry about everything having to be in the cans, right? I mean,
Well,
it's
the people I grew up wanting to play with, if I ever got a chance to play with, I wanted to make sure I could hear them.
yeah,
So why am I going to play louder than they are? I'll match their intensity, but I still want to hear them. You know,
yeah,
that's one of the
sure,
pet peeves of mine in bass solos is that, and a lot of bass players are playing with their amps loud, So the drummer's beating hell out of this stuff. He's building a condominium over there during the bass solo, and it's like, it's a bass solo. I know you're doing it together, but the drums are more active and louder than the bass solo. And so I'd like to hear the bass solo. You're going to have your chance to play it a minute, but let me hear the bass solo, you know?
Yeah.
So I think contour of what we do and orchestrate within the piece is sometimes overlooked. And I wanted to hear Ray Brown when he played a solo. So I would support Ray Brown and give him the energy and intensity that I thought he required. And he never asked me to do anything differently. So I was in on what he needed. I zoned in on what he needed. I applied. That's why he hired me for the job. He figured I knew what to do. You know, you
Yeah.
don't have to tell somebody what to do if you got the right person. So Philly Joe Jones, in my lesson with him, I had a whole day with him from 11 o'clock to 7 at night. I was playing with Monty Alexander and John Clayton at Charlie's Playboy Lounge in Philadelphia. It was a pretty rough part of town.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
linoleum floor and a wrought iron fence around the bandstand to protect the band, and the spinet piano. It was just an awful place, you know. So Bobby Durham, the great drummer, lived not too far away. He came in and stood to the left of the bandstand, and I had just replaced him with Monty. So I thought, oh, this is going to be good, you
Oh
know.
boy. Oh boy.
And I'm 21 at the time. And about two tunes later, Philly Joe Jones walks across the front of the drums and sits at the red vinyl booth next to the China symbol, the A swoosh that I was playing at the time. Don't tell anybody. And so, and so I asked Philly Joe for a lesson that day. Durham wasn't very kind to me, you know. So I thought, well, how much worse could it be with Philly Joe? So John Clayton says, go meet Philly Joe. You transcribed him. He's a big hero. So I asked him for a lesson. I ended up getting a lesson the next day. It took 3 buses and a taxi to get to his brownstone. And one of the important things he told me was, if you can hear everyone in the band, he said I should be more active. He said, you're laying there like a doormat for these guys. Make sure that you're more active. Let them know you're there. Punch them. And I said, well, Monty doesn't want me to play any louder. And he said, I didn't say anything about volume. I just said, let them know you're there, you know, nudge them a little bit, you know. If
Yeah.
you can hear, and this is what he said, if you can hear everybody on any bandstand, if you can hear everybody acoustically, your volume is perfect. If you can't hear everybody acoustically, you're too loud.
Wow. That's great. That's
Great rule to live by, because we're also
yeah.
monitor crazy now. We're getting a false sense of what it is that is coming out of the instrument. I'm talking about
Exactly.
acoustic music now, you know, I mean, of
Yeah.
course
No.
you,
Yeah. Yep. Which, but you're right though. I mean, and I think that even with acoustic music, probably people have gotten a little monitor crazy too,
yeah,
with it
big
being a
time.
little louder than people playing at a louder volume than they need to.
Right.
Um, I want to, as we get close to tight on time, we still have time. Um, when we were talking about Mapex, I wanted to talk about your snare drum that you designed for Mapex, the Maximus,
Wow.
because we talked about your cymbals with
Wow.
Crescent.
You have
They,
brought it back to me, haven't you?
I have brought, of course, Jeff. It's it was always going to be about you, but I wanted to ask you: is your snare drum? When I had Russ on the show, he was talking about how the sort of strategy, the goal of some of his snare drums, and I think he mentioned yours as well, was to make it affordable as well as
Right.
a great drum, needless to say. But is that the case with yours? Is it a more sort of moderately priced snare
That's
drum?
from what I understand. It is. Uh, I don't. I've seen drums that, you know, either you want a car or a snare drum. You know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think it's probably in there. It's where they have it. I haven't paid too much attention to a lot of the others that are coming out or out, but I think it's probably in the ballpark.
Yeah.
But he had almost designed the thing and then said, what changes would you make? And we arrived at different bearing edges, top and bottom, and a different strainer. Snare bed, I think a little difference on the snare bed. Um, the wood was fine. I wanted a warm sound that that would still speak if you need some bebop comping, snapping off of it, you know,
Hmm.
without being too brittle sounding. And as you know, I play a lot of in the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra, a large big band, and I do a lot of trio work. I play in
Hmm.
organ trios, and pretty much groups that I'm co-leader or leader of. And again, that's kind of where I want it. I like where I'm at with that now. So I know what I need drum wise and cymbal wise to work in those settings. So to get a snare drum, it's going to work in a piano trio where you're whispering soft sometimes, and the snare, the brushes are speaking well, and then you're clobbering, shout chorus in a big band where it's
Yeah.
got to be heard without being obnoxious. I want the warm sound to blend with the band, but still be heard by the audience. I never liked that term cutting through the band. Oh, that snare drum cuts through the that cymbal cuts through the I don't Mel Lewis said that to me
Yeah.
one time. He says, "Why do he said, "I love the guys I play with. I want a cymbal that blends with the band. I
Right.
want to make
Right.
music with the band. I don't want to cut through anything. I don't want something to stand out." I said the snare drum has to be the same color as the other drums. Otherwise, people visually look at it as cutting through the band. You got a
Yeah.
metal snare drum, therefore it's going to cut through the band where the other drums aren't. Visually, I mean, people listen with their eyes way too much.
Yeah. That's a really
John, I'm
good
over
point.
here. John, I'm over here.
And I think Mapex guarantees that if you buy that drum, they'll sound just like you. And I think that's great.
Well, they
They'll
wanted to, but I told them not to do that because we'd sell more if they didn't bring that up.
I was going to say, and just see Jeff Hamilton for refunds
Right, right.
because you're going to want your money back.
That's
Uh,
right.
oh no, that's great. Well, man, this has been a blast, and we've the time has just gone by as I knew it would. But um, I wanted to just quickly see if there's anything else we want to talk about besides having a great glass of wine tonight that I'm going to raise my glass in your honor for.
All right,
And
all
just
right.
because it's after 5 here, Jeff, so I'm nearing that time.
That's
Um,
why you're closing this thing off. You've had it. Okay, all right. I got you now.
no, hey, and by the way, Bob Terry has just very graciously jumped in and said your drum retails for or map price is $879.
Okay,
So that's a very reasonable price,
all
as you
right.
say, in this day and age of either buying a car or a snare drum. That's affordable. Oh
Good
man,
news.
yeah.
That's good news. Yeah.
But thank you so much for being here today. It's just a
All right. Thank you, Johnny. It's nice to catch up again. Well, you haven't done that for a while, so it's nice to be invited to be on your show. Thank you.
oh, thank you, Jeff. It's an honor, and I will say this, and I know everybody watching will agree. You're a treasure. You really are. You're just a national treasure, uh, musically and as a human, and just everything else. I just honor our friendship so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John, and I think the world of you. So I appreciate having this time with you, and best of luck in what you're continuing to do. So.
Thank you. Thanks.
And, and,
All right.
and I don't know if you need both drum sets behind you. I've heard you, and you might want to concentrate on one. But
You know, I was gonna open this whole thing by saying I was playing a little bit today. In fact, I really was before we got together, and I was thinking,
hey, you know what? It's almost after 5 out here too. I gotta run.
I told people I wasn't responsible for their injuries caused during laughter, but I was thinking if you had to describe my playing, I sound like a one-armed right-handed drummer trying to sound like Jeff Hamilton.
So you're good at playing the cha.
Yes, the cha.
All right.
Oh man. Oh, big love
Thank
to you,
you.
my friend.
All
Thank you,
right.
Jeff. Thank you for watching, everybody.
All right.
Um, big hand for Jeff Hamilton, my
Thanks,
hero.
everybody. Thank you.
All right.